Good afternoon, I think. Hi, everybody. Wasn't that amazing? I found that really inspiring, and I ran out of time to photograph because I couldn't write down the one-liners so quickly. So look, I'm really honored to be back. I had a fantastic time at OAC last year. I thought it would be my only time, so thank you to the organizers for having me back. Thank you also, with a little smile, to put me after such a fantastic speaker. Now, I think my job is to say we've seen this inspiration. And I don't know about you, one of the tests I always have for a successful conference event is I want to go home inspired and jealous. And already I'm inspired and jealous. I thought that was such a fantastic story. So I think my job, the title was just read out, Global Trends and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Sounds terrible. Thank you. It sounds really boring. So what I talked with Rajiv about is how do we make this personal? How do we take these global trends and how we apply them to India and make it personal for you in the room? So what I wanted to do is say, what have I seen around the world for how we make this really work for different companies? So the idea is some people in this room are leaders in the industry, some are smaller companies. And how do we help the smaller companies leapfrog to the top? Of course, there are lessons for the leaders as well as for the challengers, and I'd like to talk to both. Oh, now we've lost the font, so we've lost some of the spacing. Okay, we'll keep going. So what I'd like to talk about today is how we apply the lessons that we saw from our previous speaker to grow specifically in out-of-home. So my background to this, I'm providing advice, insight, consultancy because I came into out-of-home in Clear Channel. I started as CEO of Clear Channel UK. We grew the profit there about 10 times over. That went quite well. I took on various other roles, including being president of Clear Channel Europe and part of the global leadership team there. So I have a lot of experience seeing the trends in different countries. So what I hope to bring to you today is seeing the trends that are true in different countries, what can apply here. So today, I'm consulting and advising to media owners, to investors in media owners, to vendors, a lot of them are tech vendors, bringing smarter IT for how out-of-home can work better, and to various professional bodies in advertising and out-of-home and beyond in leadership development. Now, it's all very well listening to a consultant, but I am also here as a challenger. My main project now is to launch my own media owner in the UK where I apply these lessons. So I hope what you'll see is my playbook for how I think a challenger can leapfrog, and also putting my money behind my mouth to say I am doing this myself, because it is all about making lasting change happen at scale across all of these things is how we make the human change last. So I'd like to start by looking at how we leapfrog the leaders. And my first thought is that leadership is not about size. I remember when I joined the industry and my team were busy looking at JC&Co, who are twice our size, and then I worry that you're just looking at how big you are. And I think as we just saw, there's a man who has been a leader from birth. It's not about the size. I think leadership is about attitude and behavior and what you do. And actually, through all the practical lessons I'll be talking about today, this is the biggest single thing that can come through. The main way to leapfrog the so-called leaders is to be a true leader yourself. And I want to talk about, therefore, two things. The first is what you are. I'm going to show some bedrock beliefs that I think every entrepreneur, every challenger needs to show, whatever your industry. So I'm going to start with that bedrock for all entrepreneurs looking to leapfrog. And then I'll move on to 6 things that I've seen happening that are proven in out-of-home to help you leapfrog the leaders. So it's this bedrock and then the actions you can take in out-of-home. So first of all, the bedrock for a modern, vibrant entrepreneur. Look, Oscar Wilde said, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. I think that's wonderful personal advice. Have the confidence to be who you are. But over and above, I think it is critical business advice. This is not just about the personality. I think when I joined my company and we were looking at JC&Co, we were in danger of becoming a very weak copy of somebody else. I think that's personally terrible. I also think that it's terrible for business. I think it is better for each of our companies to be the best us that we can be. You're a better leader, your people are better, you're more motivated, you have more fun. Ultimately, I think that fun, enjoying what you do, drives the motivation, the talent, the capability, and your personal performance. It also means in business terms, if you're being your best you have your own distinctive strategy, your own brand promise, and you get better brand performance by being who you are, not being a copy of somebody else. And that makes the sustainable difference. So my first bedrock is to have the confidence to know yourself, be yourself, personally and as a business. Now the second one is to say, I'm humble enough to be truly great at selling. Very often, a lot of the great sales leaders, it's all about me, but I don't think it is. I think it's all about my customer. And I think selling is a core leadership task. You have to like your customers. I hear people go back to the office and complain about the customer. I don't think you can sell if you don't like your customer, if you don't enjoy their company, if you don't have a real affinity with their needs and their pain. And how are you going to solve their problems better than anybody else? As a leader, you have to know how you're solving your customer's pain better than anyone else. And when you hear somebody complain about their customer, I think they do not be in business for long. It's also, of course, as well as a leadership task, there's a management task in making it happen, and that can get really complex. It was one of the big things I would do in country after country, and there are Gantt charts, and that's a whole separate presentation on how do we transform media sales, which I can talk about another time. But what is important to establish today is the leadership task of loving your customer and truly understand them. And the third bedrock is to truly embrace your role. I hear challengers wishing they're an incumbent, and incumbents wishing they're a challenger, and both are a mistake. We have to embrace what we're doing and celebrate it. I've been the challenger. I've been the incumbent. In several industries, in telco I've been both, in out-of-home I've been both. And I've had more fun as the challenger. And I was really inspired by the previous talk because a lot of the points that were made I would completely echo. You have to have clear thinking and creativity. And you have to have the courage to be, I've called it here, being contrary. The point that was made half an hour ago. If everybody tells you you're wrong, you might just be right. You have to have the courage as a challenger to swim against the tide. Because if everybody is seeing it, everybody is doing it. You must be different. And to do that, you have to take joy in the risk. You have to take joy in being different. Therefore, you have to be comfortable with failure. And you have to have the emotional resilience to sleep well at night, even when something has gone wrong. And if you don't have those things, you're not equipped, I think, to be a challenger. Because challengers, by definition, have to break the rules, and sometimes that goes wrong. Now, I know that a lot of you in the room also work for incumbents. And I want to say, look, there's nothing wrong with being a major successful company, and you can win too. I've also worked in the major incumbents. I would encourage you to say, be what you are. Don't pretend to be a small, nimble company if you're not. Sometimes you do need to have something that is different. I have worked in a major corporation in British Telecom where we needed a challenger brand. Well, the way you do that is an arm's length, separate unit with true freedom. A separate building, a separate CEO, their own culture, and then they can be truly nimble. Don't try and fake it. On the other side, at Clear Channel, I needed a premium brand. The same thing, separate building, separate leader, true freedom. Don't try and fake it. Know your strengths. You have real strengths. Challengers long for this. Your strong balance sheet, your existing processes, the fact that everything just works. So use these. Be ruthless and use your scale. And finally, disruption. Every incumbent ought to live in fear of disruption. And that's right. We should be aware of the things that could deposition us. The best response I've seen is to partner widely, whether it's with other companies or with academics or with media entities. Partner widely to see what's coming. Don't try and lead the disruption, but the moment through your partnerships you spot one, then you invest hard and fast to be a fast follower. You cannot follow every new emerging idea. You let them go. But when you see one winning, okay, now you invest hard to overtake and be a fast follower. So you don't need to live in fear if you're clear on your role as an incumbent. But it's more fun, I think, to present most of these thoughts from the point of view of the challenger. So I go on now. That's what I think are the bedrocks in every industry for every challenging entrepreneur. Now I want to talk about what are the specific strategies, the specific things you could do in out-of-home that I'm seeing working in many different countries around the world. Now, most of my examples are from Western countries, but I see them work again and again, and I think a lot of them will apply here as well, and I look forward to debating that with you. So I've used the metaphor of judo, because the founder of judo talked about the problems of taking on a powerful adversary head-on. And I think the same is true. In my new company, for any of you who are challengers, if you take on an incumbent, a major, at what they do head-on, for sure they will win. They have more resources, more energy, more depth to call upon. But if we adjust, if we play to their weaknesses, if we use their force against them to lose balance, then as challengers, we can win. And I love the absolute certainty you will defeat your opponent if you do it right and use their force against them. So what I'm talking about today is encouraging you as out-of-home challengers to play judo. And I've got 6 judo moves to think about. I'm sorry, we've lost the fonts on the slide, so it's overflowing. So the incumbents, of course, they have great strengths. I've just talked about some of those. So you must never attack head on. But also, as an incumbent, every good leader makes choices. You make strategic choices. And of course, that means saying yes, but it also means saying no. So every good incumbent will leave gaps in the market. And of course, nobody executes perfectly. So even where they're in the market, they're not all doing it right. So this gives you the opportunity, if you can see the gaps in what the incumbent is doing. And back to my point about your clients, it's no good if there's just a gap in the market. Is it a gap that your client genuinely cares about? Do they feel the pain of that gap? And finally, is it truly a strength for you, or can it be a strength for you? So the test I always say is all three things. You often hear people say, there's a gap in the market. Okay, but is there a market in the gap? And to be sure there is a market in the gap, it has to be true pain for your clients, and for you to fill that, you have to be truly brilliant at meeting that need. So this is where you can play judo against the incumbents, and I will share my 6 suggestions for that. So in the first one, Bill Gates said that we always overestimate change in 2 years and underestimate change in 10 years. So I've seen that in this industry. People moved too slow on digital and then too fast on digital. And in different countries, it happens at different times. And same on audience measurement, on programmatic trading, and so on. So you see this time and again. The father of modern investment, Ben Graham, he said in the short run, a market is a voting machine. In the long run, it's a weighing machine. What does he mean? What he means is in the short run, investors follow fashion. In the long run, they get the value of a company about right. And I think that's true in our market as well. We see the majors following fashion all the time. And finally, that's another way of saying you've seen the Gartner hype curve before, where you get all the excitement long before there's anything really working. Then everybody writes it off. Maybe Bitcoin is going over the top now. And then eventually it will come back and actually be useful. So these are all ways of talking about that cycle. And one of the things I love about it is usually it's given as a warning not to go too quickly. But also, Mark Twain talked about reports of my death are greatly exaggerated. So the way I see this, for example, in the UK and other Western countries, you'll hear people say paper is dead. There's no need for paper. And it's simply not true. What it means is as the fashion moves through the hype curve and we say, great, everything's digital now. I'm a big fan of digital. I took my company in the UK from 4% digital to 60% digital. It's great, really fantastic. But to say paper is dead, I think is not true in any country. So this is a way of saying wherever you are on the hype curve, there will be value that's being left behind by the incumbents. So my first judo move is to be unfashionable. What are the incumbents over or underdeveloping? Is it an environment, roadside or retail? A format, billboard or 2 square meter, or even business models, paying capital or minimum guarantees or revenue shares. And what I've seen is they majors again and again like a few particular environments, they like a few business models, and they tend to go too hard or too soft on digital. So in particular, the gaps I've seen in many countries is as part of their focus. The majors are talking about major metropolitans only. And we saw earlier on in our first presentation from KPMG, the rural revolution is so important. Truly national coverage matters. In many countries, the majors are slow to get into retail, shopping malls and so on. They're big on airports, they're big on railway stations, but slow to get into retail. And they can be difficult to put together a network of retailers. I've seen in more than one country gas stations, petrol stations, ended up being a positive environment if you could do the deals with enough different landlords. So be unfashionable, swim against the tide. As we were hearing earlier, if everybody says you're wrong, you probably have something right. Now, the next area I want to talk about is what we sell and how we sell. Again, we heard earlier on in the KPMG presentation about the power of location. And I think that is truly important. It is our context. As the world moves to a localized view of advertising, a customized view of advertising, our ownership of location is a critical advantage. And we sell location very hard. We sell it with time, your particular period to have your poster at my location. And in more and more countries, we're selling audiences as we get better at measuring them, and we're bringing the data in to be able to be smarter on that. And it is good progress, and these are the right things to be doing. But the challenge I have for our industry is these are all valuable. These are all great. But the challenge I have is what does your client truly want? Does your client, your marketing director or the CEO of your client company wake up in the morning and think, I must have that location? Well, in their heart, no, they don't. They're interested in, can they get engagement with the heart or the head or the gut with their customer? Can they get to engage with the customer? Can they get the customer to take action? Ideally, can they turn that action into a purchase, and so grow their market share and grow their profitability? So these are the outcomes that our customers truly want. And we're busy selling them the inputs. We're busy selling them a poster on a location, when actually what they want is these outcomes. So we find ourselves in a position that we have these inputs that we're selling, which are great things to have and we're rightly proud of and people should buy more of. But actually, their client is wanting those outcomes at the end. And we force our client to go through a fog and the uncertainty, the risk of turning our inputs into their outputs. So we underprice. Because there's a risk there, because it's limited, we end up having to underprice. So I want to urge us to say, my second judo move is to have the courage to sell what our clients really want. It's not always possible, but I think we can if we listen to our clients, if we get creative. At the moment we're selling the input, can we move to get closer to the output? I've given some examples here, but your imagination can come up with many more. So even in our current media world, you could be buying Mondays because your clients switch bank accounts on a Monday. You could be buying drive time because you have a radio station. Somebody could be buying hot weather, cold weather, a sport event, a competitive action, a train arrival, for example, point of sale data. I have a client who uses real-time point of sale data to optimize their creative and their media plan. Now, all of these are possible today with the right software. So I think this is a very effective way to change what we're selling. But actually, I think we should go further down the funnel to get even closer to what our customers want. Our customers often want to drive their customers to do app downloads, for example, or to make a number of phone calls into a call center, or even right down to sales and purchase and track purchase results. These are harder deals to make work. The first few are easy. We can do them today with the right software. But ultimately, the closer we get to our customer, the more they will value what we're doing, believe in the confidence that we're having. So as well as the underlying philosophy that selling what your customer wants is better business, I also see directly it's better business for us. So if you go to our friend at Posterscope and say, look, I have this poster site for this period, he has a very good idea what he thinks he should pay for that, and the buyers can beat you on the price and push you down. But if we go to our friends at the buyers and say, I want to sell you Monday, or I want to sell you 10,000 app downloads, or I want to sell you drive time, mostly they don't know what that should cost. So now you get to compare yourself to whatever is the right comparison. Targeted online video, for example, very high CPMs, and so on. So by getting away from the old anchors and into selling new products, you have the chance to reset the market and redefine the value you're creating for your customer and how much of it you should be taking, which is plenty. It also means when you have these multiple order types, you're never full. If you sold this poster for that week and this poster for that week, it's very easy to end up all full, all gone. But when I'm having these multiple order types with the right way of selling to customers so they pay the fair price, if you have the right way of doing it, it's very hard to fill up your inventory, and you can always find a way to take in a version of the campaign that the client would like. And adding value with data. I think a lot of companies now have applied a lot of data very cleverly to get audience to be smarter. But I think there's much more to go. Brendan, I'm sure, will talk to us later on about the great work that are doing linking with point of sale. And other companies are doing amazing work around the world to say, what's the depth of data I can do? And I'm going to come on later and talk about online. One of the biggest problems for the online media owners is they let the agencies do all the value add with the data. And it's great to see some of the best out-of-home media owners starting to do that for ourselves and keeping the value where it belongs with the out-of-home media owner. So I'm going to go on and talk about my next judo move, which is to say, this is a modern way of thinking, and for the incumbents in the room, I know having been one, what you're thinking is, I probably want to do this, but my IT just won't let me. Now that's great news for challengers. As a challenger, you can have a modern business supported by modern IT. The trouble with the legacy IT is that it forces you to stick with your old business model. It's not, there are problems with its old architecture, it doesn't have good webhooks or modern APIs, or it's written in an old-fashioned language. Many technical reasons why it's a problem. But even more important is the first bullet point, because what the old IT does is take your old business philosophy and your old process and lock it in and keep you stuck in 10, 20, 30-year-old business philosophy. Whereas for a challenger, there's a whole new wave of software as a service vendors, these new SaaS vendors, bringing a new attitude to out-of-home, and giving you the opportunity to change your business with these much faster, much leaner models. So most importantly, of course, this new wave of vendors is bringing new functionality. It gives you new opportunities to use your inventory to serve your customers better. That's the biggest advantage. Of course, any software as a service solution also changes your cost profile, and it moves it from capital to ongoing cost. That can be easier for a challenger. And more importantly, your internal focus. You're getting the best of modern software without having to have a big internal IT team, which means that your team focuses on your customers, your landlords and your advertising clients. It connects to your customers because it's a modern architecture that integrates well through the web. And finally, we talked about the average age being 26. Look, when I look at the way my kids work, everything's online, everything's on a phone, everything's on a tablet, and these modern systems work very well with that. And there are many companies that I think are offering great offers here. I've given some of my few favorites here, LiveDo, who do the inventory optimization, Signkick and Bubble, who do great self-service, Site2 are similar, Moving Walls. I think Shrikant might be here, the way they're looking at data. Similarly, some of the other, even the older ones, Iuda and Broadsign. There's a lot of great services available now to unleash this new potential. It's a great advantage for you challengers to say, I can start afresh and I don't have to embed the 20-year-old philosophy in my IT. Now, the next one to talk about is digital. Last year, my whole speech was about digital, so I'm going to do it briefly today. And it's fantastic. I'm a big believer in digital out of home. It really works. It really adds value. I was debating earlier, does it grow the market or is it just substitutional? Of course, it's a bit of both. Unless you're in Australia, where it grew the market brilliantly. But in most countries, it's a bit of both. But you have to do it. In most countries, we find that out-of-home is the only growing offline medium, and that's largely because of digital out-of-home, allowing our clients to be much smarter. Now, I just showed an image of the screen because my point is that it's not about the screen. The mistake that we make is we build a screen and we think that's the job done, and wasn't it expensive, and doesn't it look beautiful? And let me tell you, those media owners don't make money for very long, because we're charging the client, I don't know, in India, in most countries, somewhere between 5 and 10 times as much for a slot on a digital screen as on paper. 6 is fairly typical. And the client won't pay that if all they're getting is a scroller on steroids. We have to show some value add. And that comes back to the place we started. It's about you. It's about your attitude, your creativity, and your bravery in being different in the way that you do digital. You can unlock it with this new wave of IT. You have to make it really different to simply paper on a loop. Digital does look great. When it's done right, it looks great. You can use full motion video. That's fantastic. But that's not enough for the premiums that we're all charging for digital. You've got to look at how you're flexible in your planning and your booking and your pricing. You have to look at live data and responsiveness. You have to have a fundamentally different media plan available to your client to make digital justify its premium. And I believe this is one of the areas where most people tell me I'm wrong, but I firmly believe you have to have the courage to have a lower occupancy and a higher price. And if you get to your yield through a lower occupancy and a higher price, then that is good news, because the low occupancy means high availability. I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as a wonderful thing. My availability is an asset, so when the important client phones to say, can I run this strange campaign this afternoon? Yes, sir, you can. No problem at all. And you have the flexibility to run in what you need to run. So I would really encourage the bravery with being different about what is digital, and therefore different about how you price it. It really comes back to attitude, creativity, and bravery. I spent a long time in telco where we did very detailed analytics. Our friend earlier said earlier on, if you lead what you study, you will never lead it. Well, I studied astrophysics, and I'm glad I got out. But it gave me the capability to apply the mathematical evaluation to the complex telco pricing, and I brought lots of skills to out-of-home for how do we price this thing. And what I learned is that it was all useless, because it wasn't about the analysis of what could the market bear or the value to the customer. What it came down to was when I talk to my sales team, when I go down to my sales floor and I walk among them and I look them in the eye and say, here's the price you have to tell your customer it costs. What's the biggest number I can give them the confidence to say without giggling? And this is absolutely, again and again, the way I would price digital, and it would work. The biggest number you can get the salesperson to say without embarrassment is always where we manage to anchor it and get the price moving. But you have to be brave and inspiring as the leader to get your people to do that. Moving on to the next thought. This is a pirate raid. You can see the pirates attacking these poor people on the left here, getting overwhelmed. Now, in my metaphor here, the people on the left are the online media owners. These are the websites, and the pirates over there are a lot of the media agencies and the way they've done programmatic trading. So from this, you might think that I think programmatic trading is a very bad idea. I don't. I think it's a wonderful idea. I'm really positive about programmatic, but we have to do it right. Online media owners got raided, and we have to do it differently. We have to start with automation. Automation for me is a no-brainer. It makes buying easier. Why wouldn't you want it to be easier for your customer to buy? And it saves everybody some money. But also programmatic opens us up to new budgets, and it gives us the flexibility to create new products. So it should be a really positive idea for us. But we have to make it work for us. We have to do it on our rules, not on the online rules. So first of all, set yourself up right. You have to be smart and savvy enough to know the value of what you're selling to this client on this deal. It means you have to really know your market. One of the biggest problems for the online media owners where programmatic doesn't work for them is they don't know enough about their clients and the deals, and they're not able to really show how do I add value in this deal. And secondly, once you know the value you're adding, you have to be brave enough to say no when the deal is wrong. And I don't hear media owners say to agencies often enough, with the greatest of respect, I can't do it at that price. And in programmatic, if you're not willing to say that, you shouldn't be in there. The old joke about poker, if you don't know who the schmuck at the poker table is, it's you. If you dare not say no in programmatic, don't be doing programmatic. But it can be done. You have to avoid a mechanism that simply commoditizes. So I'm very cautious, for example, about simply throwing audience views into an exchange. That becomes a commodity. I talked earlier about location. Location is our context. The actual site that we're built on is our quality. If we simply throw audience eyeballs into an exchange, we get commoditized and the price goes down. But there are mechanisms that could drive the price up. And I'd love to see more of these. So, for example, if you're truly adding value with your data, I think you can charge more. You're selling a different product. I've named a few here that I think are the leaders. I think Goo in Australia. I think the way Outfront are talking about the way they're doing the subway in New York. Grandi Stazioni in Italy, the major stations in Italy really impressed me with the brave new way they're taking on data, moving walls, and so on. I think there are many doing it. You have to dynamically repackage. I mentioned LiveDo earlier, who enable you to repackage all the time, depending on what's coming through. And I'm a big fan on using a private marketplace to drive price up. One of the things that the magazine publishers have seen, let's take the example of Vogue. There is only one back cover on Vogue. And they found that by putting that for sale in a private marketplace, they could get the price up, not down. Well, look, when you've got your premium locations at the peak time, you have that finite supply that your clients want. I think if we do it right, we can use it to drive pricing up. I'd love to see more of that. Now, by the way, I know that many of you are thinking, but my buyers aren't doing this today, and that's true. But they're getting ready, they're arming up, and I would really encourage you to be ready and to arm up, and most importantly, when you have these early conversations, to set it up on your rules so you don't get raided like the online publishers did. And the final one, coming back to where we started, is it is all about culture and leadership. The biggest change you can make as a challenger is to make it personal. I know that's a cliche from the Hollywood movies, but this time it is personal. In a challenger, in a startup, it is all about you. Whoever is the leader of that, whoever people are looking to, it does have to be about you. You have to personally embody the company you want to be and have the courage to do that, and have the courage for people to tell you you're wrong. And this gives you, I loved the point about you cannot discuss and decide. Brave decision-making means fast decision-making, which means that you're better able to serve your customers and you're more likely to have fun. So I would really encourage you to embody that because it gives you a better customer focus, it means you can innovate faster and therefore better, and you'll attract the best talent. So you get into a virtuous cycle, but it's got to be personal. You have to have the courage to make leadership vulnerable and personal and go out there and ask people to follow you, which I think they will. So in conclusion, there are, I think, these bedrocks that every challenging startup needs to follow across any industry. But to take the brief I was given of what are the global trends and how do we apply them, well, to make it more personal than just an academic thesis, I have seen in many different countries that these 6 judo moves specific in out-of-home are working, sometimes for incumbents, more often for challengers, and they work. They drive your business. I think challengers have more fun. A very subjective list. I've shared some of my favorite ones on here, some of whom you'll be hearing from over the next couple of days. And as I said earlier, what I like about a good conference is you want to go home inspired and jealous, so I hope you're thinking I want to add my name to the list. I certainly do too, as I work on my own challenger in the UK. So I'll be applying these with my own money at my own risk and proving that this is the right way to grow a business. So I hope to see you on the road. As you apply these tools, I please encourage you to keep in touch. I'd love to hear your stories of success or otherwise with how these work for you. And I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this knowledge session. Mr. Dearden, I know that we've got Q&A session that's lined up right now, and I'm going to invite Mr. Jayesh Yagnik to kindly join us on stage. He's going to present the 3 questions that have been uploaded. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jayesh Yagnik is CEO Moms Outdoor Media. A loud round of applause, please, as he joins us on stage. Welcome, sir. 3 questions
Hey, how are you?
that he's going to present right now to Mr. Dearden.
Well, Matthew, thank you so much, first of all, for the lovely interactive session. Because of the paucity of the time, I'll just quickly move on to the questions directly. The first question, which is coming from Mahfooza Sheikh from Placard Communication. The question is, how we can able to integrate with the modern or a new global emerging trends in the OH industry? How the integration can happen basically as compared to the global industry here?
I suppose I take the question at 2 levels. My first thought is how do we connect personally so we know what's happening and we can learn the best practices and indeed from other people's mistakes, which are the best mistakes. A lot of that is coming to events like this, and I'm a former president of FEPE, the global trade body, and so going to these events we can learn and we can connect. And keeping in touch with the right newsletters. I know the OAC has its own publications, and the global ones from people like FEPE can help do that. But following up the connections you make with people, with the leaders you see and the people you resonate with, I think is really important. Perhaps on a more structural level, one of the reasons I talk about the new software as a service companies is I think they unlock new attitudes and business models. And I think it's a very interesting way to be able to take your business quite quickly and change your business model and change your approach. So I don't know if your question was an IT-focused question, but I think these new wave of vibrant software as a service companies are more than IT. It's about unlocking a different attitude to your business. I think that's the way I would look at it.
Good, thank you. The second one is from Mr. Nishant Kumar from Atin Promotions, and he is asking, Indian OH market has more media density as well as more eyeball hits. How do we ensure quality over quantity in such a dense, cluttered market?
It is a problem, and you see it in country after country. There's a good business model, people overbuild, you get oversupply, you get clutter, and you can't get the cut through. And you find that citizens, consumers start to object, you find that cities start to object. So in the long run, I have good news and bad news for you. In the long run, this clutter will not survive. In the long run, some of it will have to come down. It does not mean the market will shrink. It will mean that the market will go on to fewer sites. So in the long run, I believe that will have to change. That's what we've seen in every country. On the other hand, the short run could still be 5 or 10 years, and that's plenty long enough. So I think it comes back to having the courage to make a distinction. There has to be a distinction in the physical product, how you can be better built, better locations, better cut through, or maybe the proposition, wider eyeballs. You know, if you happen to have a company with a lot of low quality but plentiful estate, nothing wrong with that. Then you have to have the right proposition about the wide audience that you deliver. So I think it comes back to having the courage to see where you can make yourself a point of difference in the market. I love it if it's a physical difference, but if it can't be, you can still be creative with the way you use data to solve your customers' problems better.
Good. Thank you. Third and the last question which I'll take is from Mishu Mahajan from Kanaya Advertising. The question is, what are the future perspective of OH in the environment where digital advertising is slowly but steadily taking over most of the budget in most of the marketing plans? What are your thoughts on how it is progressing globally?
So if I worked in any other offline medium, I would worry that digital, by which we really mean online, is an existential threat, that online media is going to kill most other media. However, in out-of-home, I really believe it's an opportunity for us. In most countries, in most years, out-of-home is the fastest growing offline medium. In some countries, it's the only growing offline medium. And I think that technology is our friend. We have digitization, we have and somebody was talking earlier about the link to the mobile. I think that's really important. I would argue that in a mobile world, every single outdoor location is a digital location. Out-of-home is a wonderful engagement, a brand medium, awareness medium, and then mobile is an engagement medium. So I think the way we do creative will change. I think the way that people link from outdoor advertising to mobile will change and get better. But ultimately, I see mobile as a great opportunity for us to be the last branding channel as the world goes online. So I feel hugely positive about the future of outdoor in an online booming world, because outdoor will remain the broadcast brand medium, while online becomes the engagement medium to pair with it.
Great. Thanks, Matthew. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And right now, sir, you're going to have to choose your favorite question.
It's like choosing a favorite child. I'm going to go with the third question.
All right. Well, the third question it is, can we please have the name of
Which one you said first?
third?
Third.
The third question.
Third is Mishu Mahajan from Kanhaiya Advertisers.
Mr. Mahajan from Kanhaiya Advertising, congratulations. You're going to walk away with a check of 10,000 rupees from Alak Advertising and Publicity. Congratulations, a loud round of applause. And you could get this lucky. You need to upload your questions onto OAC Asia 2018, the app that you can download onto your cell phones.